I'm Frank Howell. I'm a demographer at the Board of Regents, and I'm adjunct professor of sociology at Emory University. And it's a pleasure to be here today and talk to you at this summit. When I was asked to do this, I thought about the problem that the man who developed the programming language C++, if you've ever heard of that or used that or what have you, he said his goal was to create a language that made his computer as easy to operate as his phone. And recently he said that that dream has been realized. He no longer knows how to operate his phone. So in a way, talking about geospatial technology is a little like that. If you kept up with the news yesterday, you know, the Kauffman Foundation out of Kansas released a study on the State New Economy Index for 2008. What are state rankings in a global, entrepreneurial, and knowledge and innovation-based new economy? What many people just call the information economy. The states that led the nation in having the right stuff for a new economy of highly skilled, highly technical, and highly paid workers include states like Massachusetts, which itself went from a low-wage manufacturing hub into a hotspot for biotech, software development, and medical research. Topped the list both in 1999 and 2002. If you remember the movie over the environmental hazard that went into courts for years and years over the tanning factory, John Travolta was the lawyer in that. Well, that was in Massachusetts. So if you think about the history of Massachusetts and the textile industries and some of the others and where they've gone, it didn't happen because the private sector said, let's change. Part of it happened because of what state government in Massachusetts has done over a 20-year period. Well, states that are more likely to emerge from what we're currently going through a bit sooner and in better shape than others, they're more likely to be oriented toward the future and not part of the past. Now, Georgia ranked 21st on this list that came out yesterday, and that's pretty good, but that's down from number 18 6 years earlier. The key rankings for Georgia were number 23 in the base of high-tech professionals, 35 in workforce education, 41 in the movement of knowledge workers to Georgia. We've got a lot of people moving here. We're going to have a lot more moving here. But we're 41st in knowledge workers moving here. We're number 6, however, in the fastest growing firms, so we have a culture of business innovation, and that's a good thing. We were number 30 in initial public offerings, IPOs. So that's a little bit, Georgia's doing pretty well, but they're not poised necessarily to capture part of this new economy wave. Geospatial technology is clearly positioned as part of that. It's part of the future, not of the past. Briefly, it was estimated to have grown from a $5 billion industry in 2001 to about $30 billion in 2005. Now that's $20 billion in remote sensing, pictures from space and airplanes, and $10 billion in the GIS market. The information sector, which has about a 5% projected annual output growth rate. That's the second fastest growing sector in the national economy. The real output for this sector is expected to increase by over $600 billion through in the next decade to 2014, to reach $1.6 trillion. Incredible growth. So geospatial industry is not a one-trick pony that's out there paddling by itself. It's part of the stream that it can ride along with. Now, what is the geospatial industry? And that's a real tough one. If you think about computer programming back in the 50s and 60s, the Census Bureau didn't even keep up with that label, that title. The most widely accepted definition of the geospatial industry, actually Godet et al., part of the et al. Is a former student of mine, John Carr, an information technology field of practice that acquires, manages, interprets, integrates, displays, analyzes, or otherwise uses data focusing on the geographic, temporal, and spatial context. That's a mouthful. It also involves the development and lifecycle management of IT tools to support the above. The current President Bush did a really good thing in terms of identifying high growth, high demand occupations, and those are likely to continue into the next administration. The geospatial industry is the focus of that President's initiative, and Department of Labor's Employment and Training Administration will have this ongoing for some time. They can't ignore that. Even if politics were to change, it's not going to go away. This initiative funded some nonprofit GIS education centers in Charlotte and Nashville because it targeted those areas as having the capability of rapid growth. Now we've got a similar kind of center here in Georgia that Chris Emergen is going to talk a bit about, funded through the National Science Foundation. Here's a little profile of total U.S. employment, and you can see that, you know, these are not large shares with the exception of electrical and engineering technicians there. So you can see how these vary a great deal, but they're all fairly good jobs. And so this is a definition that BLS is using right now to define the geospatial industry. Well, why are we growing? Well, NASA is a big part of that. I'll kind of skip over a little bit of this. They launched a major initiative to try to become the biggest customers for a commercial sector. I happen to be a leader in that with NASA money. Open source that I think we're competing with down the hall, open source software. Entrepreneurs, very important. The commoditization, thank the bass fishermen and the hunters for buying GPSs at Walmart. It's a commodity if it's available at Walmart or Costco, okay? Our biggest problem is the lack of training, and that's something that's been documented clearly. We've got a number of things that we need to train people in. Now, one of the things I'm doing down at the board, and that this PowerPoint will result in a paper document here in the next month or two, is to look at what training is needed for what occupations. And using BLS's projections, we'll have a pretty good idea of at least the local labor force where we need workers with these kinds of degrees. Now here's Georgia's share of the national geospatial labor force through 2014. And you can see that we've got a lot of strength in aerospace. We don't have some strength in some of the core areas, however, in GIS. And so that's one little thing we need to focus on. Here's where we're likely to go. We're going to continue our growth share in the future. Where we're not going to do as well is in some of the core areas, like cartographers and photogrammetrists. So what are we going to do about that? Now, these are changes in wages. These are going to do pretty well. I don't know about environmental engineering technicians. Somehow they left the bus left them. I don't know what's going to happen. When you look at modeling of how our occupational projections are going to float with the nation's, it's really not bad at all. However, wages have kind of a curvilinear thing, and there's something going on there. I think that they left the bus. I'm not sure. Their Breeze card didn't work if you're a MARTA person. Well, here's some concentrations. GIS professionals work in different industries, although some are concentrated in some areas. Well, where's Georgia today? Where are we going? Is there enough to build out a statewide industrial sector? And will human capital have to be imported like we're currently doing? When I look at Dun & Bradstreet data, I picked just a couple of these core areas. You can see that really the Atlanta area dominates the number of companies and the number of employees, but there are some onesies in different spots in the state. Some of them have pretty decent sales volumes. Now, the barriers to this are training, training, and training. Bangalore, India is becoming a leader in the geospatial technology industry, and we have companies and agencies, perhaps like yourself, that are exporting the work there. Their government recognized that digital data was an asset and this was a growth economy. Like other sectors, a skilled workforce is a key. Having an atmosphere for innovation in the information sector is another. The biggest one that I can share with you is that the government, state government, viewing digital data as a strategic asset is also central to the industry. We've got, this is a preliminary picture, we've got some training gaps that education in Georgia has an opportunity to weigh in on. Let me kind of skip over here for sake of time. Here to the take-home point. State agencies must view digital data as public assets, much as forestry, waterways, and other physical entities are managed. Public education system, from K-12 to PhD, must play some role. And there's openings for jobs with certificates, one-year certificates, two-year degrees, all the way up to PhD. To generate wealth, we've got to have the high-level training as well, and we have to have a culture to mine the brain trust in higher education and spark innovation in the commercial sector. An economic development coalition, in my humble opinion, must focus state government efforts through partnerships incubator incentives for startups and industry cluster development. And now, to embarrass you with my punchline, Mississippi's way ahead of you in doing that. They started 10 years ago, and they have somewhere on the order of about 50 companies there. So that's kind of a take-home point. I want to thank you for listening.